Greetings, everyone. It is a pretty clear, not too bad, always humid morning here in Southeast Georgia. I'm doing pretty well. I slept in again, like yesterday, so I didn't go on my run that I wanted to. I don't know what's up with the past 2 days. I don't remember one of my alarms going off, so I think that may have contributed to it. So I gotta figure that out, so I can keep on being healthy. So that was just weird. Anyways, gonna be getting right into the marketplace morning report. They should be starting about right now. I don't really have any topics to discuss before we get into the news, so here we go.
% on average. So if inflation was higher than wage growth,
Ooh, inflation.
It means for the month of June at least, we lost a little bang for our buck. The way economists say that is our real average hourly earnings fell. Now, 1 month does not make a trend, but as Marketplace's Henry Up reports, there are forces at work in both the labor market and inflation data that could further eat into Americans' wages.
First, the labor market. It's doing okay on the whole.
It's the Biden crisis all over again.
But the job market isn't growing like it was a couple years ago, says Skanda Amarnath, executive director of the research firm Employ America.
The willingness to hire workers is slowing, and the reason we're really not seeing negative job growth is primarily because employers have largely hung on to their existing workforce.
Employees are more reluctant to quit their jobs to find better pay. In this kind of stagnant job market, Amarnath says,
it's often really hard to push for wage increases.
And then there's inflation. Tariffs haven't yet pushed up prices all that much, but the cost of some goods that are often imported, like appliances and toys, increased in June. Jeff Stroll at Georgetown University's Center on Education and the Workforce says we'll probably see more of that going forward.
People had inventory sitting in warehouses, and now all of a sudden the tariffs are catching up with the newest load of merchandise coming in.
If those costs get passed on to consumers and the labor market continues to weaken, we'll probably see more reports like this one. I'm Henry App for Marketplace.
President Trump's bill to claw back federal funding for foreign aid programs and public broadcasting could get a final vote in the Senate today after agreements yesterday to shield some money from cuts. Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer has more.
The Senate voted yesterday to advance the measure to the floor for a final vote as soon as today. First, there will be hours of debate and votes on amendments. One amendment would shield an AIDS initiative begun under President George W. Bush, known as the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR, from cuts. The White House also reached a deal with Republican Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota. Rounds was concerned about funding cuts to public radio stations that broadcast on tribal lands. The Trump administration agreed to transfer money from the Interior Department to those stations. The bill would still cut about $1 billion from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting's budget, which funds NPR and PBS and their affiliates.
So they're still going to be losing money.
The House already voted for the legislation.
GPB will be losing money.
Senate, it'll have to go back to the House for a vote on the Senate changes. The House will have to vote by this Friday for the cuts to take effect. I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer for Marketplace.
I hope it fails.
All right, let's do the numbers.
I don't care about the numbers. For the sake of the public good, because that's really what, NPR, GPB here in Georgia is for, is the public good. It's getting emergency information out about hurricanes, about floods, about surprise storms, natural disasters, man-made disasters, all that stuff out to people. And that doesn't apply just here in Georgia. It applies across the entire United States, especially in places like, South Dakota, where, that one senator got his carve out, his protection, kind of similar to what Murkowski did on the big, beautiful bill, or the reconciliation bill, I should call it. But also, people up in Alaska, people out west, in the square states, they don't have huge radio markets that can make up for it. Sorry if the sun's glaring again. So it's absolutely ridiculous. Fund GPB, fund NPR.
Which still processes some 90% of the world's supply, Daniel Ackerman reports.
The U.S. hasn't always relied on China for these materials, says Salim Ali, a geographer at the University of Delaware.
There was a time in the 1970s and 80s, the United States was the largest producer of rare earth minerals, and most of those rare earths came from the Mountain Pass mine in California.
But over time, China's rare earth industry put nearly all of that out of business, says Neha Mukherjee of Benchmark Mineral Intelligence.
The reason why their cost of operation is very low is because this entire thing is funded by the Chinese government, and it has been taking control over the supply chain gradually, and it has only been increasing that control.
Yeah,
And Mukherjee
it's a
says
command
China
economy.
isn't afraid to exercise that control.
China uses critical minerals as a strategic leverage, and they can turn on the tap whenever they want to, and they can turn off the tap whenever they want to.
And in April, amid Trump's trade war, China turned off the tap on some rare earth exports. That spooked the US auto industry and the Pentagon, because those rare earths go into a special kind of magnet.
It is used in fighter jets, it's used in submarines, it's used in missiles.
So the Pentagon chose to invest in producing rare earths here in the US. With the deal, MP Materials plans to mine rare earth ore from that same old Mountain Pass mine in California, and it'll process that ore and turn it into the magnets.
They are in the midst of creating a full supply chain.
Morgan Bazilian is a professor of public policy at the Colorado School of Mines. And he says, while the government has provided some support to the industry in the past,
This is absolutely a step change.
Bazilian says the Pentagon has promised to buy rare earth magnets from MP Materials at a higher price than Chinese-made ones currently fetch. That guarantee has helped spur more than $1 billion in additional private financing for the project. And as part of the deal, the Department of Defense gets something else too.
The DOD would become the largest shareholder in the company at about 15%.
The company points out that's far from full control.
I'm
and they're
sorry.
still publicly traded.
Did you say the government is going to have maximum stake in companies that are industrial? That sounds mighty socialist to me.
That's historically been common in other countries, says Ali. Countries like China. I'm Daniel Ackerman for Marketplace.
What? They're just trying to copy China, but shittier. Like, that's all it is. China has a plan. They have a command economy where they try and follow a plan. And now the American war hawks in the Pentagon are freaking out because they enjoyed the cheap planned out resources from another country, which they are treating as an enemy, unreasonably, mind you. We can get into that another day. So now they're just trying to do a crappy copy of it, but instead of entirely developing, a state-run mining and industrial refining process, they're just gonna be dumping an ungodly amount of money into these private companies that already exist. But if they have a major stake in the operations, that can be helpful because then they can kind of bend the will of the company. If the company starts to, screw people over or screw the government over in terms of costs, but I don't think that's going to be an issue because the Department of Defense, its primary mission, in my opinion, is to make money for defense contractors. It's not to protect the American people.
Could become bills next year when the General Assembly reconvenes. For GPB News, I'm Sarah Callis.
West Nile virus
I
has
just
been
missed
detected
that.
in mosquitoes sampled from Midtown Savannah, Hapeville, and Northwest Atlanta. The positive samples were pulled from traps set out by mosquito control. Public health departments in Fulton and Chatham counties reported this week. Affected areas will be treated with insecticide. There's no cure or vaccine to treat West Nile virus.
Nope.
If contracted, it can cause mild to moderate fever, headache, rash, and gastrointestinal symptoms. To prevent mosquito bites, people are advised to follow the 5 Ds. Avoid dusk and dawn, dress to avoid skin exposure, drain standing water in yards, keep doors closed, and wear insect repellent with DEET. It's GPB.
Live from NPR News.
I also like Picaridin insect repellents. It comes usually in this gel, and you can get these huge pump containers of it for not too bad, but I find it works good on mosquitoes and sand gnats that are down here on the East Coast, and ticks as well. It usually uses a tick repellent, but it works on mosquitoes and sand gnats really well.
Germany and then replaced by Germany, and in all cases, the United States gets paid back in full.
Russia has launched massive strikes against Ukraine since Trump announced the weapons sale, including in Ukrainian President Zelensky's hometown. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation confirms at least 20 people were killed at a food distribution site in Gaza today. They say nearly all of them were trampled. The site is run by a U.S. and Israel-backed group. Immigration authorities are defending a new tactic to locate people living in the country illegally. The Associated Press says landlords are receiving subpoenas from the Trump administration for information about their tenants, but question if they're legally required to comply. NPR's Tovia Smith reports.
Landlords are getting written demands to share leases, tenants forwarding addresses, and ID cards from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Anti-Fraud Unit, according to the AP. But the subpoenas are not signed by a judge.
Oh, so they're not real.
Homeland Security spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin declined to comment
They're
on
just
whether
pieces of
or
paper.
how many subpoenas are being sent to landlords, saying in a statement to NPR.
There are napkins that say, "Please tell us who lives here."
But she added, subpoenas don't need to be signed by a judge to be binding. Failure to comply with an ICE-issued administrative subpoena, she said, may result in serious legal penalties. Tovia Smith, NPR News.
I don't know about that. They should call lawyers. Lawyers know better.
Bill that President Trump signed July 4th will end tax incentives for wind and solar projects. A nonpartisan think tank expects that to drive up electricity bills. NPR's Michael Copley reports.
Without tax incentives, the cost of wind and solar projects will go up, and the country will likely use more natural gas to generate electricity, pushing up power prices nationwide by at least 9% over the next decade, according to Energy Innovation, a nonpartisan think tank. The increase could be much higher in Republican-led states that don't encourage renewable energy projects, which are often cheaper to run than gas plants. Energy Innovation says power bills will likely increase by between 60 and 350% in Oklahoma by 2035.
Jesus
The White House
Christ.
spokesperson, Taylor Rogers, said in a statement to NPR that President Trump is taking steps to boost U.S. energy production.
No, he's not.
Michael Copley, NPR News.
The Senate has advanced President Trump's request to take back more than $1 billion previously allocated to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, along with almost $8 billion earmarked for international efforts to combat famine and disease. This is NPR News. China is launching a new digital identification system for internet users. Authorities say it's optional and will protect people's privacy. NPR's Emily Fang reports, however, the new system has raised concerns of more state surveillance.
The national ID system will be a 10-digit code assigned to each person through a system being mostly administered by the country's powerful public security ministry. Every person could then use that ID to register accounts on social media or e-commerce sites, protecting their personal information from being recorded and saved by individual platforms. But the ID system also means China's police will be able to more easily identify every person's online activity. In practice, that already can happen. In the last decade, China has built up a formidable set of overlapping online censorship and surveillance systems, which authorities use to suppress dissent. An online ID system, however, would directly give China's police a centralized way to track people online. Emily Fang, NPR News.
Which is what lawmakers are trying to do here anyways through the use of Palantir. Like especially the Trump administration, but the Biden administration too, are trying to use Palantir to do the exact same thing. So if you think this is a China-only problem, it's not. This is why we need strong data privacy laws here in the United States that model what we have in Europe, but really go even farther than what they have.
Allowed President Trump to have control over the troops while the case plays out. President Trump says the U.S. has reached a trade deal with Indonesia to impose a 19% tariff. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include ARM, with the new podcast series Tech Unheard.
Wow.
ARM's CEO.
The radio's just getting crunchier earlier on right now, this week. I don't know what is happening. Maybe it's just something this week, maybe something it'll get better next week. So we'll try and push through. We'll see if it stays good or if it gets worse. We'll see what happens.
But all of that is at risk. Eliminating already approved public media funding could disrupt these essential services.
Urge Congress to reject rescission and protect the federal funding that makes GPB possible at protectmypublicmedia.org.
Protect public media.
This is Morning Edition on GPB. I'm Pamela Kirkland. Thanks for starting your morning with me and GPB. Just ahead, NPR talks with sociologist Irene Vega about how immigration agents are trained and what shapes the decisions they make on the job as the Trump administration plans a major expansion of ICE with plans to add 10,000 deportation agents. That's coming up in 15 minutes on Morning Edition on GPB.
Families are invited to stop by GPB from Wednesday, August 20th through Saturday, August 23rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Oh, what the heck? I think I'm picking up someone's Bluetooth. Which does happen. Certain like Bluetooth devices will output on frequencies similar to like low band FM radios or low frequency FM radio stations, and it just messes everything up.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. Good morning. How can businesses and consumers prepare for higher tariffs? First, President Trump is repeating his complaints about the Federal Reserve, pressing its leader Jerome Powell to cut interest rates more quickly.
The president's own tariffs are making it harder for the Fed to bring inflation under control. A new report from the Labor Department shows inflation heated up last month.
We'll try and finish off on this story because I do want to hear it.
To the president's double-digit tariffs.
And then I think the radio is going to be done for.
Is covering all this. Scott, good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
This is a really interesting topic for me because the president has, by design, trampled a lot of the limitations of his power in the executive branch, has not yet directly interfered with the Federal Reserve, but he certainly talks about it a lot. What's behind that?
Yeah, president's lower interest rates to juice the economy and make it cheaper for families and businesses to borrow money. In Trump's case, he's also trying to cut the federal government's own interest expense, which is closing in on $1 trillion this year, and could go even higher as a result of tax cuts and spending increases that congressional Republicans just passed. So Trump is unhappy that Fed Chairman Jerome Powell and his colleagues have not moved more quickly to cut interest rates. Here's the president speaking to reporters outside the White House yesterday.
Jerome Powell is too late. He's way late. Interest rates should be coming down.
No, they're not.
We have a
the inflation's going up.
Country. We should have the lowest interest rate anywhere in the world, and we don't.
But in almost the same breath, Trump boasted about the tens of billions of dollars that the government is collecting in tariffs, and those tariffs are one reason the Fed is cautious about cutting interest rates.
All right, I'm going to pause it there. It's getting too crunchy. But yeah, no, the tariffs are the reason. They're not the only reason, but they are a prime reason why the Fed is reluctant to lower rates whatsoever. And it is just that. It's the it's the fact that there is uncertainty in the market, there is inflationary pressure because of supply issues that tariffs ultimately cause, and when you have a supply issue, you have an inflation issue. Because demand will stay the same or demand will rise because now there's this like psychological pressure of like, oh God, this might not be available. I need to get it. And there won't be the supply for it, or the prices for it up front are going to be higher. Gonna cause inflation. And the Fed is very much under the mindset, and most economists, it feels like, are under the mindset that the only thing that controls inflation is your interest rate. You know, the idea that people are going to be hesitant to borrow at high interest rates, you know, so they're not going to spend and whatever. And therefore it will lower inflation if you have higher interest rates, and you're going to raise inflation if you have extremely low interest rates, you know. But it's more complicated than that, and of course I'm not an economist whatsoever, but I'm of the belief that inflation is caused by supply shocks. And if you look at the history of inflation, especially the last like 20-30 years, you see inflation of prices for like specific goods or across market goods when there are supply chain issues. So, just the way it is, you know? Ultimately, we need to get rid of the supply chain issues, i.e. get rid of the tariffs, or have selective tariffs that benefit the American economy for things that you are, you know, willing to pay more for, or you think it won't be, you know, as great of an issue. But if you make everything more expensive, you're raising prices of everything. Like, that's just the way it is. So if you're worried about interest rates for debt, the American debt, I can think of $1 trillion that you can get rid of in defense contracts, and what was it? A couple $100 billion in unnecessary ICE funding. So you can get rid of all that. It won't be an issue. So, oh, and then, you know, of course, medical care. You know, if you just universalize medical care, the per person cost will go down, and then you don't have to have Medicare and Medicaid be so absurdly expensive because of the private market pushing prices up instead of, you know, the public, which is, you know, a very limited public option. It's not even an option. The public last resort for medical care, not driving prices down, because it doesn't drive prices down whatsoever. It models with the private medical industry, which is evil. So you got all that, and then of course you can always just raise taxes. You know, you could raise revenue. That's like the best way to deal with debt, is by raising revenues. But ultimately, these debts, like, I don't know, it's silly. I'll get into that another day. But anyways, I'm gonna leave off there for now. I hope y'all have a good Wednesday. I'll be excited to see y'all tomorrow. Hopefully nothing too crazy happens, but we will see. I am hoping the Senate knocks down the defunding of NPR and of PBS and of you know, child AIDS organizations. And by that I mean, I hope they don't defund efforts to stop children from dying from HIV/AIDS. Simple as that. Y'all have a good one.